Welcome back to your show, Identities Umhlobo, where today I'm joined by Delphine from the UN Women. She's the country representative of UN Women Zimbabwe. Delphine, you gave us a leadership 101, if I can say it that way. You've just taught us about leadership. I was seated here and I was like, wow, am I all these things that are being said? It's so easy for us to move around and say we're leaders, I'm a leader. But why is it so important that we have women in leadership, especially as we focus on ending discrimination against women and girls?
I think a lot of the work that we do, or anything that we do, you really have to have not just knowledge, but also some level of experience of addressing these issues. We know that even, for example, the African woman, she's a multiple of identities, you know. She has the issues of color, she has the issues of discrimination, whether it be race or even just the country that she comes from, you know, and then being a woman on top of all that. So if you're talking about discrimination, and addressing the issues, it's really important that you know your business, you understand it well, and knowing also the depth of which we're dealing with it in the country. It's important to be honest that you know it or you don't know it. What you know can help people move forward. If you pretend to know and you try to do these things, you're actually creating harm.
Exactly.
Right? So to me, the African continent is dealing with a lot of issues, multiple issues, whether it be the economy, whether it be issues of education and the rest of it. It means that you really have to have a good sense and understanding of how to address the multiple identities, because in Africa you don't just come as one person. You don't just come as I'm discriminated against. What is causing that discrimination, and why are you discriminated? And you know, so even when you're talking, because you talk a lot about young people like yourself and how to get engaged with it, it's really having a real passion and understanding, and not just from understanding and experience, but learning. You really have to do a lot of reading and understanding, and not just your community, but you also have to understand what are other people around the world doing. What are they talking about it at the highest levels? What is, for example, the UN at the highest level? What are they saying about it? What are different countries saying about it? What are they doing? What can I then do in my own community? So also being exposed broadly is important, as much as it is concentrating on these discriminations within your own area. You have to create a world view for yourself to engage in anything.
And so that will become like what women need to also be leaders in their own issues, to know not only within your own experience, but also to realize that the next woman definition of discrimination, even within our contexts or community, or even in the family, one person's discrimination is different from the next person. That is so deep, and I hope that we are understanding that, so that we become more aware and more responsive to diversity and more respectful to other people's opinions. So why is it important for women to be part of leadership in resolving the discriminations, the issues that they're having to deal with?
Well, I mean, as I was saying earlier, you have to know the issue, right? And so if you're a room, let's say, full of, and I've seen a photograph of this, a room full of men discussing sexual reproductive rights. And so the viewpoint will probably come, I mean, there are probably medical doctors in the room. There are probably scientists who can then tell you from a biological point of view, they can tell you, yes, that's a perspective. But if the perspective doesn't include the people who are experiencing it, then the perspective will always be biased in a certain way. It's important that those who either experience or are more knowledgeable from the fact that they live it, then that is why, you know, a woman needs to be at the table. And they say that in politics, they say that in issues of violence against women. It doesn't matter what the issue is. If you're trying to talk about me, you have to include
not
me.
for me without me.
Exactly.
And I think you help me to then jump into Hear Me Too, this year's theme. I think you've just beautifully summed it up, that Hear Me Too is me, I have to be at the table if you're discussing me. What is the situation in Africa? What is Hear Me Too in Africa?
You know, that's an interesting question because we don't know fully yet what it is. We hear the campaign, the Me Too campaign is what we hear most about, right?
Yes.
But how it plays out in our context is quite different. We know the backlashes of speaking out. We know it's not just, let's say you spoke out because some distant relative did something, you'll be told you're shaming the family, right?
Yeah.
And that shaming the family means you're going to get ostracized in a certain way. And if African families are extended families, you can imagine the social impact on you for that, right? So we need to really also pick up that conversation about Hear Me Too, what's going on. I need to say something. We have to give people opportunity to have that space,
Right.
but to have the space very carefully and in a way that they're not going to be ostracized, they're not going to be ridiculed, they're not going to be discriminated against, because we depend on each other in Africa a lot. We depend on each other a lot. I know if there's a question that I need, answered, and I know you're in that field, I can call you up and say, can you help me understand what this is or whatever. But if you turn on and say, I can't help you because you're afraid, even your own circles will then. So we're dealing with issues of when you hear someone, it's not just about hearing them. It's also about protecting them. And it's also about providing them that social protection as well in societies like ours that don't necessarily have social nets that can support you through governments. It's not like some countries where you leave a job, you can get unemployment for a year, you can get welfare and whatever, and you'll survive somehow. You're really dependent on your social network.
Wow. So when we come back from this break that we're about to take, we want to understand what Hear Me Too really is to a woman in Chendambuya, to a woman in Kai, to a woman in Cholocho, to really say, okay, what are the challenges that they're facing, and what is even Me Too? Because some of these people don't know what, some of our people don't know what it is. And then when we're now adding Hear Me Too, what can I do as a person to include myself in the Hear Me Too? So don't you go away. Stay with us. We're just taking a break. We'll be back soon.